So, after 3 years, 3 months, and 27 days, Critical Role Campaign 3, the journey and story of Bell's Hells, has finally come to an end. But the question is, was it actually good? Out of Critical Role's 3 campaigns they've run over the last 10 years, the stories of Vox Machina, Mighty Nine, and Bell's Hells, it's pretty undeniable that Campaign 3 was, well, Critical Role's probably most divisive campaign for their fanbase. But why is that? Why is it that so many people seemingly had some kind of a problem with Critical Role Campaign 3? Hello everyone, I'm Finn. Welcome back to FinFilm. As those of you who watch my content know, I am a massive nerd, a massive lover of all things fantasy and Dungeons & Dragons, and everyone's favorite nerdy-ass voice actors, Critical Role. In this video, I want to talk about Critical Role Campaign 3 as a whole. What I liked, what the fanbase seemed to not like, and I want to try to answer this question. Just how good was Critical Role Campaign 3? Okay, so before we can really dive into the kind of nitty-gritty of what a lot of the fanbase's problems have been with Critical Role Campaign 3, first we need to do a little story recap. A little speedrun action, if you will. So obviously, spoiler warnings for Critical Role Campaign 3, if that wasn't obvious. As well, guys, this video is just my thoughts and opinions, so keep that in mind before you write that hate essay in the comment section down below, and maybe, you know, hit that like button and subscribe. So Act 1, the first arc of Campaign 3, is the typical kind of intro arc for a Dungeons & Dragons campaign. The party comes together in the city of Drusar on the continent of Marquette, and we are introduced to our chaos crew of characters. Autumn of the Arashari, played by Liam O'Brien, Fern Calloway, played by Ashley Johnson, Imogen Timmel, played by Laura Bailey, Ashton Graymore, played by Taliesin Jaffe, Fresh Cut Grass, played by Sam Riegel, Laudna, played by Marisha Ray, Bertrand Bell, played by Travis Willingham, Bertrand Bell dying 3 episodes into the campaign to introduce Travis's real character in Campaign 3, Chetney Pockaby. And for the first time really in Critical Role history, a guest player is basically an official member of the party, especially considering just how many episodes they were in from start to finish. Dorian Storm, played by Robbie Daymond. Now, the greater story of Campaign 3 largely revolves around the mystery of the Red Moon of Ruidus, the Apogee Solstice, and those of Exandria known as Ruidusborn. Ruidusborn basically being a person that was born under the light, the flare of the Red Moon, these people sometimes being born with special psionic magical-esque abilities like one Imogen Timmel. As well, the story focuses around the nature of the gods of Exandria, and specifically their relationship to their mortal children. The main crux of kind of the mystery of Ruidus, this Red Moon, gets revealed throughout the campaign's second arc in what we're gonna call the Lore Dump arc. In this arc, they learn that the Fey creature Ira Windigoth has been tasked to build a machine by an unknown group of Exandrians to discover the true nature of this Red Moon. And that the climax of whatever this strange moon cult is planning is going to take place on an apogee solstice in 1 month's time. An apogee solstice being a period of time when the magical ley lines of the world of Exandria are the most thinnest, and great works of magic are possible. For example, the Raven Queen completed her ascension to godhood by harnessing an apogee solstice, the Archmage Vestin Kloras used the apogee solstice to release the Betrayer gods, starting the War of the Calamity as we saw in EXU Calamity, and the Whispered One Vecna harnessed an apogee solstice to attempt to ascend to godhood the first time. From here, the party learned that the Moon of Ruidus is surrounded by a strange kind of arcane lattice, a weave that resembles that of the Divine Gate. The Divine Gate being the magical barrier that was created post-Calamity and the divergence which prevents gods from setting foot on Exandria. Are you following me so far? The group also discovering by looking through Ira's telescope that there is a motherfucking city on the moon.
That's no moon.
From here, the group discovered that Ruidus was actually a prison created by the gods long ago during the founding when a strange god-eating entity arrived from the stars called Predathos. The entity at this time destroying 2 gods whose memory had been forgotten and lost to time in Ethodoc and Vordo. The gods then, both prime deity and betrayer god alike, fearing for their lives, made a deal with the primordial titans of Exandria. With their combined power, they were able to seal Predathos within the moon, where it has remained slumbering for thousands and thousands of years. As well, we learn that this cult of moon-loving Exandrians is in league with the unseelie courts from the Feywild and being led by the Cerberus Assembly wizard, the archmage and big bad guy of our campaign, Ludinus Delath, who is planning on using the Apogee Solstice and these great machines that they built called the Malleus Keys to release Predathos and have it devour the gods. The plan finally escalating, coming to fruition on the Apogee Solstice in episode 50, where Ludinus Delath harnesses the power of the Raven Queen's champion Vax'ildan, completing the ritual and connecting the Red Moon to Exandria on the Ruddy Bridge. From here, the next 71 episodes are devoted to the resolution of this story and what we've created here, specifically the stopping of Ludinus and his plan to harness the power of Predathos, the god-ending entity which he plans to put inside of a vessel, namely Imogen's mom or himself, and kill the gods. Over these episodes, our party learn important information about Ludinus, specifically his past and his motivation for why he wants to kill the gods. Specifically, that Ludinus was a child during the end of the Calamity, the Great War between the gods that led to two-thirds of the population of Exandria dying and thrust the world into an arcane dark age. This trauma leading Ludinus to despise divinity, and honestly, I don't really blame him, as Ludinus made it his life's goal to free the mortals from what he thought were the chains from the gods that held us down. Belsheld would eventually help organize a resistance force with worshippers of all gods in Vasselheim, along with many other powerful allies and cities in return of everyone's favorite characters in Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine. Sam's character FCG pulling a Vegeta and blowing himself up to save the party along the way. Ultimately, this story would culminate in a grand battle, the return of Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine, with the Bells leading a strike team to stop Ludinus from releasing Predathos on Ruidus. They would succeed, temporarily sealing Predathos within Imogen Jinchuriki Naruto style, leading to the finale of Campaign 3 and what in many ways, to me, is the climax of all three campaigns, as they would treat with the gods of Exandria, presenting them with an option to leave Exandria, basically run for their lives forever from this apex predator, either that or get eaten, or to take mortal form like we saw from Exandria Unlimited Downfall.
Oh yeah, you definitely need to watch Exandria Unlimited Calamity and Downfall in order to understand what's going on in the story.
In classic Critical Role fashion, Laura rolls a nat 20 on Persuasion. Yeah, we're def not beating that scripted allegation, are we, Critical Role? The gods shattering the divine gate and being reborn as mortals across the world, and so ends the story of Critical Role Campaign 3, and closing the chapter on the last 10 years of Critical Role as a whole. So then the question, was this actually good? So as I said at the very beginning of this video, Critical Role Campaign 3 is easily the most divisive of the three Critical Role campaigns. Some people love it, a lot of other people hate it, but in general, it seems that there was a lot more hate for this campaign than from what I saw from the stories of Vox Machina and the Mighty Nine in campaigns 1 and 2. One of the primary complaints that I saw repeating itself during my time watching this campaign, especially during the first two arcs, was the pacing of this campaign. Like here, for example, it took campaign 2 399 days or 1 year, 1 month, and 3 days to get to episode 51. You compare that to Campaign 3, which took 504 days, or 1 year, 4 months, 16 days to get to the same point, episode 51. Now, obviously, there's kind of a variety of reasons as to why this happened, from like unavoidable real-life events that caused episodes to be delayed, to the campaign featuring the miniseries Exandria Unlimited Calamity, which took place, I think, like 7 months into Campaign 3 airing. Now, personally, I'm not going to complain about this because I absolutely love Brennan Lee Logan, my boy, and I personally think that Exandria Unlimited Calamity is probably the best piece of content that Critical Role has ever made. But to a fan who only cares about watching Critical Role for the, chemistry of the characters, the cast of the party, and watching the original Critical Role cast, this was probably really f***ing annoying. As well, a lot of the complaints I saw from the fan base throughout Campaign 3 was again the actual pacing of the story itself, which does make sense, as Campaign 3 does differ a lot from the first two campaigns, in specifically what kind of story is being told. Specifically, Campaign 3 is kind of the first Critical Role campaign where one major story is really being told and stretched throughout the entire story, the entire episodes from episode 1 to the finale. Specifically, the story of the mystery of Ruidus and the reveal of Predathos, this divine god-eating entity. In comparison to Campaign 1, Vox Machina is much easily divided into several arcs with their own very specific storylines. You got the Briarwood arc, you got the Chroma Conclave arc, and you got the Vecna arc, each with their own big bad guys and slew of problems needing to be solved one after the other by our kooky cast and group of adventurers. Campaign 3, well, Campaign 3 is not like that. Campaign 3 is much more like a drawn-out mystery, with the first 50 episodes of Campaign 3 being the kind of uncovering of the mystery of Ruidus and the plot of Ludinus Delath, and then the remaining 70 episodes being dedicated to stopping our big bad evil guy and his plot to kill the gods. Now, if you're like me and you love theory crafting, sleuthing, uncovering mysteries, and making theories and the deep lore of Critical Role in Exandria, you probably love this shit. If you aren't like me, then these 51 first episodes probably felt like a struggle to get through, especially, as I said earlier, the fact that it took them a year and 4 months to do it. Really though, I think one of the main things that put a lot of people off of Campaign 3 was its barrier to entry. Specifically, that you really need to have watched Campaigns 1 and 2, as well as the accompanying miniseries, EXU, Downfall, and Calamity, to, I think, really appreciate the full scope of the story and all of its themes that are being told in Campaign 3. Campaigns 1 and 2 are very much kind of building blocks to Campaign 3, as Campaign 3 and its story of the gods, Ludinus, and Predathos very much depend on the lore and the foundations that are laid out by Matt in those two previous campaigns. Like, you can't really just start at Campaign 3 as a new viewer. I mean, you could, technically, nothing's stopping you, but you're probably going to be pretty damn confused as to what's going on a lot of the time, especially once we get into, like, you know, the real meat and potatoes of the campaign. And in my opinion, I don't think you could really appreciate the beauty of the long-term storytelling being displayed in Campaign 3 without the knowledge of the world of Exandria that the other campaigns give you. As well, I think Campaign 3 kind of struggles with a problem that a lot of media struggles with, and that's the stakes. By stakes, I mean the thing that, like, any form of media uses to make you care about the story being told. Like, in general, in storytelling, the more a character has to lose in conflict, the more the stakes are raised, the more that we, the reader, the viewer, actually care about the story that's being told. Now, you might be like, Finn, what do you mean? The stakes in Campaign 3 couldn't be higher. I mean, we're talking about the fate of the gods of Exandria here. And I would agree with you. Those are pretty high stakes. I mean, killing a god is pretty classic high fantasy, like, video game anime plotline goodness. So while yes, in one respect, the stakes in Campaign 3 do feel high, in others, they kind of aren't. What I mean is that for a lot of viewers, I think that these stakes are relatable. Like, here, take a second and think back to one of the most iconic moments in all of Critical Role Campaign 1, Episode 39, Omens, when this happened.
At this point, you guys hear this sound and you turn around just in time to see what looks to be a larger than you've seen before, white dragon just slam into the side of Allura's tower in the distance. Claws clunk into the side, digging into the stonework, wings unfurled. It looks into the upper window of where her actual parlor is and kind of peeks in for a second before just unleashing a blast of icy cold magical breath into the inside of the tower. A loud thum impact that silences the chaotic air around you as the wall that the stage is buttressed up against now has perched above it an enormous vision of death. A grinning, ancient green dragon.
Delicious cattle. Raishan enjoys the taste of fear.
I just destroyed something that I built. It's a really weird feeling.
I remember watching this episode live, and along with everyone else in chat, I absolutely lost my shit. I mean, literally just like that, this world and these people who we, the audience, had been growing to love over the, the last year plus of Critical Role Campaign 1, characters in a world that Matt Mercer had spent years creating in an instant was immediately blown up by a group of dragons in an attack from the Chroma Conclave. This absolutely shocked people when we watched this live, and I think that this works so well because of how much Matt raised the stakes in this moment. All of a sudden, this world of peace was thrown into complete chaos as we watched the grand city of Taldore burn in front of our eyes. NPCs, characters that we had grown to love and care about, were brutally killed off like this was some episode of Game of Thrones. Our party, Vox Machina, were made to feel like they were weak and small in the face of this overwhelming threat, a group of ancient chromatic dragons, and you immediately knew that, holy shit, if they don't run, they're so dead. To me, what makes moments like this work so well is really the human aspect of these stakes. The death and destruction in the hands, I guess I should say claws, of what feels like an insurmountable foe. This feels extremely relatable when you're watching it. It's why you care so much, it's why you get so emotionally invested. The fact that these people, their homes, and people they care about, their world has suddenly been turned upside down in an instant, and they can only watch on powerless as everything burns around them. Now, let's compare that to Campaign 3. As I've said, the main crux of Campaign 3 as a story revolves around Ludinus's plan. A plan to kill the gods with a divine-eating entity, and in his mind, free the mortal people of Exandria from the chains of their oppressors, aka the gods. Well, indeed, this is very high stakes. The problem is, to a lot of people, this isn't really relatable. What I think makes Ludinus such a great villain, one of my favorite villains that Matt Mercer has ever created, is that he is goddamn convincing. His motivations for doing this make so much sense when you consider his lore and his backstory. The fact that he witnessed the end of the calamity, the death and destruction brought upon the world, and the downfall of the, great magocracy cities of Avalier and Aor. These cities being a symbol of mortal advancement and progress, and this is why he would have such hatred towards the gods. Obviously, what makes Ludinus evil and a bad guy is very much his ends justify the means attitude. The fact that he is willing to break a few eggs to make an omelet, to sacrifice people in order to create what he thinks is a better world. He's honestly a fascinating character, and a character that I find super relatable and very, understandable as a villain, so much so that he even has the party questioning their own motives for large portions of Campaign 3. I'm not joking, for what felt like 99% of the campaign, the party had no idea what they were going to do about Ludinus and this whole situation with the gods. Even characters like Aurum, who have strong personal reasons for wanting to stop Ludinus, are unsure as to what they should do to stop him, what they should do with the gods and Predathos. Would the world of Exandria actually be a better place without the gods and the threat of one day their sibling rivalry causing a second calamity and completely ripping Exandria apart once again, killing another 2/3 of the population? And in this lies our problem. The stakes are with the gods. They aren't really with the mortals, our cast of characters, really that much. And this makes them feel not that relatable. Matt literally basically comes out and tells us in the closing arc of Campaign 3 that Predathos really only cares about the gods. Once he eats them, he's just gonna go fuck off somewhere across the galaxy to find more gods to eat. As such, the lives of millions of people on the planet really aren't in danger from this entity. So it really does kind of make you wonder, why should we even care? And again, therein lies the problem. If the stakes aren't relatable, if you can't buy into them, then it's very hard to care and get invested in the story being told. However, if you are someone like me and you are a bit of a critical role lore nerd and you have a greater appreciation for the themes of Campaign 3, specifically the nature of divinity and the relationship between gods and their f***ed up family and the mortals that they've created,
You probably might care a lot.
However, I can even realize that on its surface, it is hard to get invested in these stakes because, again, they are less human, they are less relatable, especially when you compare it to something like the Chroma Conclave arc from Campaign 1. To me, these are just a few of the more notable issues with Campaign 3, and especially ones that I've seen come out from the fan base. Obviously, there's plenty of others as well. There's people who don't like certain characters, their backstories, or maybe decisions they've made throughout the story, the prevalence of guest characters in Campaign 3. There's plenty of other complaints that I've seen from the fan base for this campaign, but to me, the ones that I listed before are probably the most notable, and I would say the best faith critiques of Campaign 3 as a whole. Now, I know I just spent over 10 minutes basically shitting on Campaign 3, but don't get it twisted. I actually really enjoyed this story, even though it does have some shortcomings, so it seems only fair we talk about... So one of the things that I absolutely love about Critical Role Campaign 3 is the characters that our cast have created. I love every single one of them for their own kind of unique reasons, from their character design to their backstory. I think that our cast really took what they learned over the first 2 campaigns and then used this knowledge to create really fun, interesting characters that really bring out like some of their best acting chops and talents when it comes to role-playing for Campaign 3. For example, take Travis's character, Chetney. While I love Grog from Campaign 1, the problem with Grog is that Grog as a character doesn't allow Travis to really shine and show how amazing an actor and Dungeons & Dragons player that he really is. I mean, playing a character with 6 int is gonna do this. Travis has an amazing mind for Dungeons & Dragons, especially from like a tactician and strategist like side, so playing a character with a bit higher intellect allows him to actually show this off in his roleplay. Travis is also hilarious and a bit of an instigator and a member of the Chaos crew. Chetney then, as a character, combines all of these things together to allow Travis to really express himself and show off his amazing acting and role-playing skills, while still letting him be a bit of a dickhead, a bit of a troublemaker. I think this applies equally as well for Ashley Johnson's character Fern, which I think is probably my favorite Ashley character from all 3 campaigns. This character allows her to channel her chaotic, insane self in a way that I think really fits within the character. As such, Ashley probably has some of the most memorable moments in all of Campaign 3. There's at least one thing that I really love about every single character in the party in Campaign 3, whether it's the really interesting backstory and lore for characters like Ashton, Laudna, and Fresh Cut Grass, or the down-to-earth relatability of a character like Aurum, as Aurum is very much the stabilizing voice of reason in this absolutely chaotic party. And finally, Imogen's heartbreaking story of family, and her links with the greater story of Campaign 3 of Ruidus and Predathos. Because let's be honest, Imogen really do be the main character of Campaign 3. I also really love the moral grayness of Campaign 3 as a whole. Outside of Aurum, I don't really know if I'd call any of like our party members necessarily good people. This group of characters is much more nuanced and way more complex in their morality, especially in compared to Campaign 1's party Vox Machina. To me, this makes characters way more relatable. They aren't just a group of kind of like upstarts who have stumbled into being heroes or protectors of the realm. No, they're really just like a group of people that are bonded by their traumas, and they're just out here trying to survive in this chaotic world. Belltales are very much less of kind of an archetypal group of like fantasy heroes who undergo a more traditional hero's journey a la Vox Machina. And personally, I really like that. However, if this isn't your cup of tea, then you probably won't like it. As well, one of the things that I listed in the bad section for an element of Campaign 3, specifically the amount of lore and knowledge the world needs to really appreciate Campaign 3's story, is actually something that I really like about it. As someone who loves Matt Mercer's deep lore of Exandria, especially the time period of the Calamity and the Divergence, Campaign 3 felt like it was absolutely made for me. I mean, come on. Brendan Lee Mulligan playing the Lord of Lies, the King of Devils as Modius? Direct that shit straight into my veins, brother.
I hate to say I told you so!
Again, I think to really enjoy and appreciate the story and themes of Campaign 3, you need to have a lot of Critical Role knowledge. Because if you don't, things are just going to get confusing, and you probably won't care very much when a character from one of these other campaigns just shows up or gets referenced. As such, Campaign 3 in many ways is the culminations of Campaigns 1 and 2. I did a whole video discussing the finale of Campaign 3 and what I think it means for the future of Critical Role as a whole. I definitely recommend you go check that out, especially if you want to know my theory and thoughts for Campaign 4, because let me tell you guys, I got some thoughts. In short though, Campaign 3 very much seems like it is the end of an era of Critical Role in the universe of Exandria, with Campaign 4 to me seeming like it will be a very much new chapter in the world of Exandria, which now has the gods living amongst the mortals, and an almost divergence to Electric Boogaloo, if you will. Another thing that I absolutely love about Campaign 3, which I brought up earlier in the video, is the main villain, Luminous Delath. This guy is a top-tier Matt Mercer villain for me, right up there next to the Briarwoods. And it's for all of those reasons that I laid out earlier in the video. His motivation and his argument for doing the thing that he's doing. There's a bunch of like different villain archetypes out there when you're like creating a story. You have your super powerful forces of destruction like Thordak or the Mudos from Godzilla. You have looming villains who pose a constant threat from the shadows and have an almost vice-like grip over our main characters, like the monster from It Follows or Sauron from The Lord of the Rings. You have a mirror villain, a villain that is posed as a mirror to a hero, basically two sides of the same coin. The villains sharing certain values or traits with the protagonists, like the Joker in The Dark Knight. And then you have the justified villain, a villain with certain motivations that pushes them to commit an evil or horrible act. Oftentimes, these characters are portrayed as pragmatists who are willing to sacrifice and commit a horrible act if they feel it is for the greater good, like Thanos or like Ludinus Delath. I absolutely love this villain archetype because to me, it really makes you sit down and think, especially as a viewer, and it really makes you question your own morality and your own values, specifically how you feel about the world and the villain's actions, and probably best of all, it makes you feel compassion, possibly even empathy, towards a character who many would describe as evil. This is what I love about Ludinus. I mean, wouldn't you hate the gods too if you had to live through the end of a golden age, an all-out war that brought death and destruction to your world, only for the people, the gods in this case, that started the war to just vanish and leave you behind to pick up the pieces? Like, if that's not black-pilling about the gods, then I don't know what is. Campaign 3 to me is a story full of nuance, of very morally gray characters, and even more grayer moral choices, and I absolutely eat that shit up. So then, we've discussed the bad, we've discussed the good. I guess that only leaves... So as I said at the start of the video, Critical Role Campaign 3, especially in comparison to the other two campaigns, is very much the most divisive. I mean, Campaign 1 is pretty universally loved. If anything, I think it actually might be overhyped, as nostalgia is a hell of a drug, guys, and people tend to forget just how bad the technical problems were for like the first year of Critical Role, and don't even get me started on Orion. Campaign 2, from what I can tell, is largely heralded as the best Critical Role campaign from the three. I'm sure someone is frantically writing an essay about how wrong I am, but from every other Critical Role fan that I've ever asked, almost all of them tend to say that Campaign 2 is their favorite or the best campaign. And then there's Campaign 3, which has very much divided opinions in the fan base, especially within its first 3 months of airing. I mean, don't take my word for it, all you gotta do is peruse the Critical Role subreddit and just Google Critical Role subreddit problems, or look at the show's drop in viewership over the last 3 years to see that this campaign was not universally loved by Critical Role's very large fan base. Now, I set out in this video to try to answer the question, did Critical Role Campaign 3 fall off? How actually good is Critical Role Campaign 3? I've given you the good, I've given you the bad. I guess that just makes me the ugly? It's very hard to say how good Critical Role Campaign 3 is. Personally, I really like it, but I can also acknowledge, for a variety of the reasons that I listed in this video, why everyone might not like it as much as I do. And that's perfectly okay. Again, I think there's a lot of really good and valid critiques you can make for Campaign 3. While I do think that Campaign 3 is better than what most people who hate on it would say, I wouldn't go as far as to call it like the best campaign of the three. At the end of the day though, I don't think that you can enjoy or respect the story of Campaign 3 as much as I do without watching all of the Critical Role content first. And even then, you might just not be down with the type of story that Matt Mercer and the party are trying to tell here. And that's perfectly fine. So then, how good is Critical Role Campaign 3? As always, guys, with these videos, these are just my thoughts and opinions, so feel free to let me know yours in the comment section down below. What did you think? How good do you think Critical Role Campaign 3 really is? If you did enjoy this video or you learned something new, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as that is the easiest way to support me, and it really does go a long way in putting these videos into the algorithm. As well, if you enjoyed this video, then want to check out some of my other Critical Role or D&D content on screen now. And as always, guys, hope to see you in the next video. Until next time, stay safe out there. Is it Thursday yet? Peace, love, adieu.